In the coming week, the airwaves, well, they'll be swamped with the words impeachment inquiry.
The center of this new impeachment inquiry.
We call it an impeachment inquiry.
Before launching an impeachment inquiry,
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi announces an impeachment inquiry.
The government whistleblower who set off the impeachment inquiry.
We really only have one topic to discuss.
Here's a live look at where the high-stakes hearing with the acting director of national intelligence.
What is in that whistleblower's complaint?
It is in the Constitution.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo subpoenaed for Ukraine documents.
These past 10 days in September may prove pivotal. Key moment in the impeachment battle.
What I think has shifted is sort of the moral implications inside the Democratic caucus.
Donald Trump will leave Congress, in my view, no choice but to initiate impeachment.
Oy vey, as my loving grandma used to say. Don't get me wrong, we have a corrupt president. Not exactly breaking news. Should he be impeached? Yeah, for about 25 things. But do you need me to tell you that? Do you need Status Coup to cover this wall to wall? I don't think so. But let me tell you something else that's very scandalous. The fact that Flint, Michigan still does not have clean water 5.5 years later. The fact that Newark, New Jersey, Pittsburgh, Milwaukee, Cleveland, parts of Florida, parts of California, parts of Massachusetts, Detroit.
So the residents have had to bear this burden of the city screwing up, the state screwing up.
So this issue about water is a growing crisis in the Midwest, if you ask me.
And many other cities in America also have water problems. Another scandal. Black men continued to be executed by the police in the United Corporations of America.
So it's many inconsistencies that's in the situation. So we know, that it's plain out murder.
I understand or have some understanding of police culture, that they like to protect their own.
For years and decades, it's been an open season for black men.
After they dragged him for several feet, they put him back on the ground face down.
Another scandal. State parties all over the country, Democratic state parties, are screwing local progressive candidates, just like the DNC screwed Bernie Sanders in 2016. Another scandal. Fracking and these crude oil, natural gas, totally unnecessary, totally toxic pipelines are being built at a record rapid pace, and there are fighters on the ground getting no media coverage.
Since when is profit more important than water? When is profit more important than people?
So if you want 24/7 Trump, 24/7 impeachment, 24/7 Ukraine, 24/7 Russia, whatever other scandal of the day, not your guy. But if you want on the ground, in the field reporting of the actual, true, long-lasting, happening way before Trump scandals in America, become a member. StatusCout.com/join for as low as a cup of coffee a month. StatusCout.com/join. Help us build the media revolution. We go out in the field. We've been all over this country in the last 2 years.
Standing Rock. I've been with you. I've been with you since Standing Rock.
Wow, you got me on right now. We're doing it, baby. We're going to South Bend. It's time to show the real Mayor Pete.
In 100 days, they tore down 1,000 houses in 100 days.
Thank you, whether it's Standing Rock or Flint or everything else you do. You know, you guys, it's not even like watching news. It's just watching truth, you know.
It's not me and you, Jordan. It's the ruling class. It's David Koch. It's the Walton family, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk. It's them, not us, that benefit from these illegal offensive wars.
Come on over here. Whoa!
We're here at the Bellagio in Las Vegas, and you are going to see live the actual caucus process. We are here.
We go out in the field, and we give the microphone back to the people.
Yo! Cool! I know who you are, yo!
How you doing, man?
You the man, yo!
Unmarked pills, okay.
Ooh, essential oils, purification. Oh, peppermint, la la la. Love it.
I am worried about Jordan, testing positive. He doesn't have any breathing difficulties right now, but he definitely has a cough that's been really bad and that's been hurting his chest.
That's Fury right there. I've cleared out the desk and now got my drill a hole and we'll see how this goes. Hopefully well. I know a general idea of what I want, essentially, so I'll try and get all this down to about a minute, get the main points, especially I got 2 videos at least for Flint.
The bottom line is, it's Sunday morning, I'm preparing for my Sunday live stream, which usually takes me about 2 hours to prepare for before the live stream. And I got an email from a viewer.
Hey guys, Jen Dice here with a behind the scenes video. First of all, thank you so much for being a member. It's because of you guys that Jamal and I are able to be here. We can't thank you enough. It means just the world to us.
Millions and millions of people have been laid off. Millions more have had their hours cut. We're kind of living in a quiet, silent depression. What do you call 45 million people filing for unemployment?
$1,200 in 3 months makes no sense. Makes absolutely no sense.
Everybody should be paying attention to what's going on because this is happening in every county, not just Louisville, Kentucky. And that's why the world is like, wait a minute, enough's enough.
And one thing I do know is if you're not sitting at the table, you are on the menu. And it seems like we continue to be on the menu.
I don't want to have to lose everything that we worked really hard for. We've been struggling for 5 years, and then we finally got everything together, and it just instantly went away.
Literally driving across the country during the pandemic, talking to people, finding out what's going on.
There are people such as yourself and other people that are telling the true story of what is happening.
All of these black people have been assassinated by police in this city, and none of them have been brought to justice.
People don't really care about those things in places where, you know, we're not New York, we're not Chicago, we're not Minneapolis, we're Louisville, Kentucky.
If somebody calls you screaming for help at 911, they never treated her. They never came to her apartment, nothing.
Vote. Vote. And do what's right in your heart, because change comes from within. So as long as your heart is pure and you're doing what's right, that's what matters.
Once upon a time there was truth in journalism, where brave men and women gave voice to the voiceless. But then the corporations bought the journalist, poisoning the news that we are fed. With those tainted sources, all we ever ate was a steady diet of status quo. This hijacked narrative hid the truth of mass suffering, injustice and corruption throughout our land. Status quo, status quo, status quo, status quo. To expose this shift to oligarchy came a band of honest journalists. They left the studio and hit the streets to give the microphone back to the people. From sea to sea, the people were empowered to share their truth. Their voices no longer stifled, reclaimed their power. Join the media revolution now.
Hey there, Jordan Sheridan live, Monday, September 14th, 2020. Hope everyone is having a good day and had a nice weekend. I am extremely sore to the point of walking around like a 90-year-old. I made my triumphant return to the softball field yesterday. The good news is I got several hits and made some really all-star catches in the outfield. The bad news is I'm pretty sore. Shocking. One softball game can make a soon-to-be 34-year-old sore in the shoulder, back, butt, and arms. So I'll have to stretch, I guess, more next time. But again, hope you had a nice weekend. There's a ton of news out. that I want to get to, and I think major news as far as coronavirus that, frankly, is not good in the grand scheme of things. So, we got almost 150 people watching right now. 81 of you have pressed that like button. I need every single one of you to smash that like button. Hold on one second. To continue that while talking about leaks from wells and needing to stop that. So basically, you know, it's kind of been status quo for a while on the coronavirus. We've seen increases in many states, then decreases. The caseload has basically gone from the Northeast, then it went to the South, then through the Midwest, and then it has come back around again to many, many places. So essentially, because our president, as the Woodward tapes showed, basically either is a sociopath, which I think there's plenty of evidence for that, or just really dumb, thinks that you could just send people back to school, reopen offices, all that with no issue, even though we don't have a vaccine. So we're already seeing, at least in New York, an increase in cases. They're also seeing an increase in cases in 11 states. I think the jury is still out. I think it's going to require a little bit more time to see after what the effects of Labor Day was, when everybody was gathering. When you look at these Trump super spreader events, including his, I frankly think, criminal rally yesterday in Nevada, indoors, very few people wearing masks. I think we probably are on the cusp of seeing a massive increase around the country. And I just spoke with my aunt yesterday. My aunt's a teacher, and judging by anecdotal, one story, I would tell you I don't think the proper protocols are in place for schools reopening at all, at least in New York, so I can imagine countrywide. I'm not going to blow up my aunt's spot, but what she told me about the school she is about to go back to is pretty horrifying. And it's really not if, it's just when the cases explode. So I tell you all this, and thank you for the super chat. Gina Gal 9, 12 bucks. Jordan, from one 90-year-old to another, no pain, no gain. God bless you. Love my 90-year-old viewers. By the way, just letting you know, if you don't know, now you know. We reopened the GoFundMe. We ambitiously raised the goal. Oh, my screen's black. We ambitiously raised the goal to $200,000. So we got a lot of work to do. Of course, if you can't donate, we totally get it. If you can, any amount helps. GoFundMe actually takes quite a lot less than YouTube does. So super chats, YouTube takes about 30%. GoFundMe, they take a lot less. Whatever's easier for you, but you can leave a super chat or a GoFundMe, but appreciate any donation to the GoFundMe. We're almost at $119,000 raised. So with all this going on, all we've been hearing about is, all right, we just got to wait. We just got to wait till that vaccine. Almost like the vaccine is the, magic elixir that's going to fix this. And it's, by the way, we're not just talking about the health consequences. We're talking about the looming depression that I think we already have economic depression-like conditions going on. We don't see bread lines everywhere, but you're starting to see a lot longer lines at food banks around the country. You're seeing a lot more people trying to get on Medicaid. And as I've reported, within the jobs reports that the corporate media tried to spin as improving because the overall number went down, the permanent job loss is increasing within those numbers. So you got the health aspect and the economic health aspect. Then we got this today.
Race to identify a safe and effective COVID vaccine goes on. A warning today from the largest vaccine maker in the world. If people need 2 doses to be fully immunized, there will not be enough to go around to all of us until 2024. Let's start there with senior medical correspondent Elizabeth Cohen. She is with me. And so, these were comments, Elizabeth, they were made by the CEO of the Serum Institute in India in this interview with the Financial Times. What is this CEO seeing that obviously has him so concerned? And then how many doses does he think could be needed worldwide?
So I'm going to take the second one first, if that's okay, Brooke. Brooke, we know that the most, if not nearly all of the vaccines that are being tested for COVID-19 are 2 doses. The 3, for example, that are in phase 3 clinical trials in the U.S., those are all 2-dose vaccines. You get 1 dose, and then about 3 or 4 weeks later, you get a second dose. So it's a pretty good guess that what we the vaccines that end up working will be 2 doses. And what this manufacturer is saying is, look, we can't just snap our fingers and make those. It is going to take time. This is an unprecedented ask to produce vaccine for basically the entire world on very short notice. And Brooke, you and I have talked about this before, that 2 doses is a big deal. It's double everything, not just the vaccine, set that aside. It's 2 sets of syringes, 2 sets of vials, 2 sets of everything, which sounds so small, right? Oh, so syringes, needles, they're everywhere. Well, look what happened with testing. That got delayed. Look what happened with PPE. That got delayed. And we have more of a lead time now than we did on those 2 items. But still, we have seen that producing these things, manufacturing them, getting them into gear is not instantaneous. It does take a while to get that supply chain going. Brooke?
Which would make sense then that everyone couldn't get this if it's a 2 for basically until 4 years from now, 3 years from now. Elizabeth Cohen, thank you. Let's get some medical perspective on all of this. Dr. Lena Wynn is a CNN medical analyst and the former Baltimore Health Commissioner. And so, Dr. Wynn, when you hear this, that it could take, 4 or 5 years to vaccinate everyone on the planet, that is, if those 2 doses are required for this COVID vaccine, what do you make of that?
I'm not surprised because we're talking about 15 billion doses that have to be distributed. And in the US alone, hundreds of millions of doses distributed twice. And that's not taking into account that maybe this is a vaccine that we have to be giving every year, like the flu vaccine. And so we should be looking at the vaccine and the approval of the vaccine as a beginning. It is certainly not a silver bullet. We should be looking at how can we live with this virus, including with all these hygiene measures that we keep on talking about, the hand washing, mask wearing, social distancing. That's going to continue for the foreseeable future, even if we do have a safe and effective vaccine that's approved.
Question, if it is 2 doses, and I'm no doctor, you are, so you get to answer this, would it be like a 1-2, bang, you're done with your 2 doses, or is it come once, get 1, and then come 6 weeks later and get the second?
It's the latter. There is going to be a separation, probably for a few weeks or a month. And so this is another reason why we have to get all of our coordination up to par. All the issues that Elizabeth mentioned with the syringes, the vials, all these supplies, but also we need to make sure that people can literally go to places, whether it's the pharmacy or their doctor's office, to get all of these shots.
So, as we're going to discuss in the next story, because as the Russiagate turns, there's more Russiagate BS out there that we need to debunk. As I'm going to discuss with that, I often don't just lazily, breathlessly, on faith, just believe whatever the government tells me, whatever CNN tells me, whatever Big Pharma tells me, whatever intelligence agencies tell me. I want evidence. However, in this case, it makes sense. I saw somebody in the super chat saying, this is not big news, this was already known. Yes and no. Because most of the talk and narrative about coronavirus has been essentially, we just got to tread water, we just got to, stay afloat, kind of manage the pandemic, until we get a vaccine. Most of it has been focused on everything will be a lot better when we have a vaccine. There hasn't been as much examination on, okay, when that vaccine comes, how quickly could every American get it? How many doses do you need? Like we just saw at the end, what would be the lag time between first dose and second dose? That has not been explored. So there's been different estimates. Obviously, Trump, with his nonsense that we're going to have a vaccine like in 2 weeks, You know, it's constantly been moved up because obviously he looks at this as, I got to say whatever I got to say to get reelected. But Fauci has kind of tempered it, maybe early 2021, mid 2021. But I think what this new proclamation by the top vaccine maker is saying is not just in America, but worldwide. You're not going to get everybody vaccinated until 2024. And when I say everyone, that includes America. Because America, frankly, unlike other countries, most civilized countries, we have a for-profit healthcare system, which means they could all tell you that the vaccine will be free, but that doesn't mean it's going to be free. In Germany, it will be free. In France, it will be free. In London, it will be free. In fill in the blank, Israel, other countries with that boogeyman of socialized medicine, it will be free. In America, it will not be free. And although I remember during the Democratic primary debates, Joe Biden saying all care related to coronavirus will be free. All you got to do is Google it. There's been horror stories about people with coronavirus leaving the hospital after a week or 2 weeks with $1 million tabs for that free health care related to coronavirus. There's also been people that have been charged for testing. So it's not universally free. By the way, we got 300 people watching live. 160 of you have smashed that like button. I need another 150. Please, smash that like button. And keep those super chats coming. My birthday's in 6 days, so we're going to really stretch out the groveling for money. Keep it coming. Super chats, GoFundMes, we appreciate it all. So, why I think this is super important, obviously there's political ramifications, but putting that aside, when you look at the 2008 financial crash, although the corporate media, like to put out the numbers, how under Obama, jobs were coming back and unemployment went down to, I think before coronavirus, it was down to 4% or something small like that. We know, those of us in reality, those of us in the progressive movement, those of us who work for a living, we know that the economy never rebounded to what it was before the financial crash. There was a permanent jobless picture. There were many jobs that did not come back. Many companies take advantage during those situations. They do more with less. They realize after they laid off people that they were able to squeeze as much orange juice out of the orange as possible, and they just do more with less. Or we started seeing shifts in previous full-time jobs with benefits becoming freelance jobs, or permalance, they called it. Or, I love in journalism, fellowships, like quasi-jobs, but really internships. That just wasn't happening in the media industry. Dimitri O.G., down 99, like a Virgo. Woo. I am a Virgo. I'm actually on the cusp of Virgo Libra, but I'm a Virgo.
I'm a Libra.
She's a Libra, my fiance. Can't wait to move so we can get a bigger house. We're on top of each other all day. Hey. Anyway, Anat did a members video too. So if you're a Status Coup member, go check out Anat's wonderful member video. I promise you, it's wonderful. We're at 1,732 members. Sign up, statuscoup.com/join. So why this is so damning is if we don't get a vaccine, even after we get a vaccine, we're going to basically continue to have this merry-go-round of cases surging, cases receding in some states. Cases surging, cases receding in some states. And even if Joe Biden becomes president, Joe Biden answers to not the science, but the donors. That's the facts. He could say and talk about answering to the science, but at the end of the day, he's answering to Wall Street, okay? He's answering to big pharma. He's answering to big real estate. He's answering to the real bosses of this corporation, the United Corporations of America. So I highly, highly doubt Joe Biden is going to do radically different from what Trump's doing now. I think he will focus more on preventative measures for contracting coronavirus, universal mask wearing, more sanitizing, more social distancing. He's not going to be doing, if he were president, indoor rallies with no masks. That I'll give him. He'll be a lot smarter about that. However, if this is dragging out possibly to 2023, 2024, without a vaccine for all Americans, I think what you're seeing now as far as the economic devastation, and I don't care if the unemployment number says 8.4%. The real unemployment number, Google the difference between unemployment and real unemployment, is still above 10%. Again, the permanent job losses within that unemployment report are increasing. This is only, if there is no vaccine for longer, it's only going to expedite the automation economy, as Andrew Yang talked about, the jobless economy. And the real danger here is, obviously, if it's Trump, and this is dragged out for several years, we have the danger of him pretending that's not the case, of him pretending, even if most Americans aren't getting the vaccine yet, him claiming that all Americans are getting the vaccine, and let's say 50 million Americans have been vaccinated. If Trump wins re-election, he'll say 150 million have been vaccinated. We're almost there. So up is down, side, real is fake when it comes to Trump. But with Biden, if you don't have the majority of Americans being able to be vaccinated basically for another 4 years, what does that mean in terms of healthcare? What does that mean in terms of jobs? What does that mean in terms of income inequality? We're already seeing, this is just from the New York Times, we're already seeing big healthcare companies cashing in huge profits for big pharma during the pandemic. So it really, really says to me, number one, if you got people who are not going to the hospital or going to the doctor to get tested to see if they have coronavirus because they don't have health care and they don't want to get charged, or they have fear that they're going to get charged, how are you going to get those people to go get a vaccine if it's not guaranteed that it will be free? That's number one. Number two, again, the employers will have a built-in excuse without a universal national vaccine for another 4 years to continue keeping those jobs that were cut permanently cut. They will have a universal excuse to reduce people's hours and keep cutting hours. They will have a universal excuse to start rolling back benefits. They'll say there's no vaccine. And you think Joe Biden's going to do anything about that? You think Joe Biden's going to say, all right, this is going on much longer than we thought, so we're going to have to do Medicare for all? Discussion closed. I was against Medicare for all in a pre-COVID world, but if the majority of the country will not be vaccinated for 4 more years, Obamacare is not enough. You think that's coming? No. Jordan, welcome to 800 AD on Insta. Farkas Garvey, $2.99. Double vaccine, double price. LOL. You're right. So, it's my birthday coming up. Let's get those super chats coming. Just saying. So, to me, this is going to, we already live in a new Gilded Age. This is going to usher in, if we live in a Gilded Age, this is going to usher in a Gilded Age. No vaccine for 4 years. We all know that even if, you could say, devil's advocate, Jordan, the United States, people are going to get vaccinated before Zimbabwe or, name your third world country. Okay, but again, do you really think you're getting this vaccine for free? Truly. You might go to get it. It's free at the point of service. You don't think there's a bill coming? You don't think your taxes are going to go up to pay for whichever companies come out with the vaccine and their R&D and all the trouble they had to go into in researching and finding a vaccine, even though we paid for that in the first place, because millions of dollars, actually billions of dollars of government money go towards these big pharmaceutical companies to research and find a vaccine. So we're basically paying for it twice. I'm telling you right now, It's not being covered that much. I saw CNN cover it, and then it went away. But thank you, Sam, $2. Early birthday super chat. Appreciate it, Sam, down in Dallas. But this is going to make the permanent job loss more permanent, if that's possible. It's going to make the healthcare crisis more permanent, if that's possible. It's going to make the eviction crisis even worse, because again, no vaccine, companies are going to continue getting away with economic murder. They're not hiring back their full-scale workers. I also think, frankly, we don't talk about this a lot. I think it could create worse for the opioid epidemic, worse for suicides, worse for the mental health crisis, because as you've seen in the Rust Belt and industrial countries, as deindustrialization and offshoring has accelerated over the last 30 years, we have had mass increases in drug abuse, drug addiction, opioids, suicides, and the next. So you heard it here first. If the majority of Americans are not going to be vaccinated for, let's benefit of the doubt, let's say 3 years, 2023, this economic disaster that we're in, which the corporate media doesn't cover as a disaster, because they're not actually going out and talking to people. That's what Status Coup does, if you know us. We actually go out and we take the temperature of the country. We actually give the microphone to living human beings rather than just pontificating all day long. They do not. So, stay tuned. Let's hope this is not the case. Let's hope that vaccine will come for everybody much earlier. Let's hope it will be actually free. But you ever read Naomi Klein, the shock doctrine? People love disaster capitalism. Companies will let any disaster, or in this case a pandemic, they're not going to let it go to waste without profiting. There is no way in hell the majority of Americans are getting a vaccine for free. So, that's that. Before I move on to the next story, do you know? Big breaking news! Status Coup, by popular demand, is now selling hats. Holy cow. Colin, thanks for covering my complete forehead. That's okay. Love that. So, if you go right now to our store in Teespring, and by the way, people have been asking for a long time for hats.
Oh my God, this graphic.
So, if you go to Teespring, Jen's got the link for you. We got 3 styles. One, which is, I guess, the regular ball cap. 2, for the cool kids, what is this called? Flat
brim.
Flat brim. And 3, I don't know the difference between 1 and 3. Maybe it's the same. So 3 styles. And, obviously, we can't go to sporting events right now, but if you're watching at home, whatever you're watching, baseball, football, hockey, I know I want my Status Coup hat. Oh, 3 is a trucker hat. Okay. Thank you, Jen. So, obviously, the Status Coup store is, another way of us making revenue. We don't take any money from big banks, fossil fuckers, big pharma, big real estate, Silicon Valley, military industrial complex. None of it. But, believe it or not, swag is marketing. I can't tell you how many times I wear my Status Coup hat, my old hat. I have the original. Maybe I'll sell it or something. You could buy it with all its sweat in it. It's great word of mouth to spread the coup. People always ask me, what's Status Coup? When Anat carries around her tote bag, people ask her, what's Status Coup? YouTube's certainly not marketing us or even showing that we exist. They're hiding us. So it's a great way of not only contributing revenue to us, but being a Status Coup ambassador. So I hope you guys will go to the store, buy those baseball caps or flat brim or whatever. We had a lot of people asking us to sell hats. So there you go. We'll keep promoting it throughout the week. I think Jen sent me a bunch of them. So I will start rocking it. And I hope to see you all. And as soon as you get those hats, please, please, please email info@statuscoup.com with a picture of your swag. As Mary, who sent us her shirt, and Gino, who sent his Status Coup poster. And hold on, do they come in red? Oh God, now you want different colors too? It's not enough just to have the hat? I'll talk to Jen about that, see if we could get different colors as well. But for now, you know, black and white will do. So definitely, yeah. And I don't even think we make that much money off. Teespring takes most of the money. So definitely purchase if you can. Need a Bernie cap, and I want a pink option. All right, I'm sure Jen is taking note of all the demands for a selection. So, moving on. You know, I took a mental health break last week. I was a little burnt out, so I didn't get to cover the raging wildfires going on in California right now. Unfortunately, the wildfires in California are not super new, but they are accelerating. They are getting worse. The images out of California, it's also spread into Oregon, are horrifying. I think 23 people have died in the last 2 weeks from the wildfires in California. People losing their homes. Just imagine the terror of being engulfed in your town or your home in fire. President Trump is basically providing no leadership. This is not just a short-term thing, this is a long-term thing, because the president of the United Corporations of America doesn't believe in climate change, or he's either being willfully ignorant or he's just a moron. I think it's a mix of both. Clearly, wildfires happen in many places in the world, from California to Australia. In some cases, it's good. In some cases, wildfires help clear out dead, trees and brush and that kind of stuff from forests. But it's not so good if it's not happening in seasons anymore, but year-round. And it's also not good if, because of the climate change, accelerated winds and wet season coming later is causing them to be intensified. So that's what's going on in California. You've had years of drought in the mid-2010s, and you also have, unquestionable higher temperatures, and those higher temperatures are leading. The higher temperatures are the spark. Those are the spark for the fuel, and the fuel is the trees, is the brush, is the grass, is basically anything that's flammable. So basically, Trump's response to this has been, unsurprisingly, ridiculous. Trump interrupted a Western campaign today to go to California to review the wildfire damage and renew his argument with state and local officials about what he says is the main cause of the fires that have claimed the lives of at least 35 people this month. While government officials and scientists identified climate change as the primary culprit behind the intense wildfires, Trump insisted during a briefing in Northern California that, quote, forest management is more to blame. When trees fall down after a short period of time, they become very dry, really like a matchstick, and they could explode, Trump said as he and others breathed in the smoky, hazy air near Sacramento. Of course, again, you don't know if he's being willfully ignorant or he's just a moron. When he says during dry conditions, why are the dry conditions lasting so much longer? Why is California's wet season coming basically a month later? Because summer is supposed to be dry, but California was having drought basically in every season for many years during the 2010s. This is because of climate change. So again, either a moron, willfully ignorant, whatever, he's dangerous. And Donald Trump is really the match, and the Republican Party, I should say, is really the match for disastrous climate change and the disastrous climate crisis, which should be treated the same exact way as the coronavirus pandemic, because long term, it's going to kill more people than the coronavirus will kill. Not that the coronavirus deaths are insignificant. By the way, we got 350 people watching right now. 257 of you have pressed that like button. Can I get another 100 of you? Please, please, please. Press the like button. It's a thumbs up button right under the live stream. More people that press like, the more people that will see the very live stream. So that's Donald Trump. But, and to be clear, this is not whataboutism. Donald Trump, I'm not a fan of Joe Biden, but reality is reality. Donald Trump is much, much worse than Joe Biden on the environment. With that said, I think we're fooling ourselves. And frankly, if you're buying the bullshit Joe Biden is selling, really what you're talking about is the difference between more immediate planetary destruction and immediate death and destruction versus a slower burn of planetary destruction and death and destruction. Biden today in Delaware in front of brush, which was, I guess, symbolic, talked about President Trump's disastrous... Father, I'm live. I'm live. You're calling me during my live stream. As always, I can't tell you where I live because I'm live right now and don't want to tell the internet where I live. Text me and I'll tell you. Bye-bye. So, the Biden... Oh my God, it's on again. Now on FaceTime. He's crazy. So, Biden is essentially, like many other things, tossing out, and I'm sorry to say, I don't think Biden is writing most of these speeches. I don't even think his policy is necessarily coming from him. I think he's got people around him telling him and putting in certain things in these policies. However, Biden is promising a lot of things. You know, aggressive shift to electric cars. We're going to give rebates for you to buy electric cars. We're going to really double down on wind, renewables, solar. That's great. All those things I agree with. However, he's talking about Donald Trump being a climate arsonist, which is true. But what the media is not reporting is, regardless of what Donald Trump, regardless of what Joe Biden says he's going to do in the positive, none of those things will make the difference that's needed to be made if he does not ban fracking. And when I hear him, and I watched his whole speech today, when I hear him say these things, it's almost like, you know, if you're in a relationship where you got a really convincing sleazebag of a boyfriend or girlfriend. You know, they verbally abuse you. They take you for granted. They flirt with other women or men. But for that 10% of the time, they know how to sweet talk you. That 10% of the time, they're really, really good at romancing you and being attentive and affectionate. So that kind of keeps you going when the 90% of the time, they're unreliable and not doing the right thing. This is really what you're getting from Joe Biden on climate change. I mean, here's one example. This is him during his speech on Trump being a climate arsonist. Hold on.
By increasing energy efficiency and by reducing the racial wealth gap linked to home ownership. There are thousands of oil and natural gas wells that oil companies and gas companies have abandoned, many of which are leaking toxins. We can create 250,000 jobs now by just plugging those wells right away. Good union jobs for energy workers. This will help sustain communities and protect them from the environmental damage as well. We'll also create new markets for our family farmers and ranchers. We'll launch a new modern civilian climate corps.
I'm going to play that one more time because it's very important.
Efficiency and by reducing the racial wealth gap linked to home ownership. There are thousands of oil and natural gas wells that oil companies and gas companies have abandoned, many of which are leaking toxins. We can create 250,000 jobs now by just plugging those wells right away. Good union jobs for energy workers. This will help sustain communities and protect them from the environmental damage as well.
So, does anybody here, if you know what you're talking about in terms of the climate crisis, global warming, all that stuff? And please, please, keep those super chats coming. Joe Biden, in one breath, and he's saying a lot of good things, I'll give him credit. He's saying a lot of good things about electric, giving rebates and tax credits if you buy electric, which China's been doing for years. Talking, up wind, renewable, yada, yada, electric transit. A lot of what he's saying is positive. However, in one breath, he's talking about creating 250,000 jobs by finding all the abandoned wells around the country that are most of them fracked gas wells, by the way, and plugging the leaks, because most of them are leaking toxins into the air. So right there, he's acknowledging that leaking gas or leaking oil or leaking waste products from the fracking process, dirty water, because you need a lot of water with fracking. Fracking's waste products are toxins. He just said it. So how in one breath can you be talking about we could create millions of jobs by doing the necessary thing, plugging leaks at wells all around the country, which I agree with doing, but on the other end, not being against banning fracking? And by the way, for those in the back who claim, because I've seen this argument on the interweb, Jordan, the president doesn't have the power to ban fracking on private land. They could only do it on public land. When the president of the United States takes an interest or has the will, yeah, you wait how fast fracking can be banned on private lands. Or if legally a president can ban fracking on private lands, a president certainly could add so much regulation to the point it's economically impossible to frack on private lands and make a profit. So you could either, if you can't ban it, you could certainly make it that fracking is just not economically possible for those mother frackers. Excuse my French. Thank you for the super chat. Gingal9, $7. What do you think they giving Biden to make him speech ready? Do you think Biden even remember what he says afterwards? Gina Gal 9, I will say, he does seem pretty lucid during that speech.
Trump said he's taking performance-enhancing drugs.
Trump said he's taking performance-enhancing drugs, which is kind of funny. There's obviously no evidence for that. He does have a teleprompter at these speeches. I'm not going to criticize him because the majority of politicians use a teleprompter, so that's not any more damning for Biden versus others. The real test of Biden's cognitive skills, obviously, it's going to come from the debates. When you don't have a teleprompter. When it's going to go, Joe Rogan apparently came out saying, I'll moderate a debate between you two. It has to be 4 hours. I don't think that Biden or, frankly, Trump could last 4 hours, cognitively or possibly even physically. But to answer your question, I don't know what they're giving him. I don't know if they're giving him something, but I do know what my eyes tell me. He's not all cognitively there. Jessica Solar, $4.99, keeping Status Coup sponsored by the people, unlike Joe Biden. Smiley face upside down. And happy early birthday. Why, thank you. Wow, we've already sold 7 hats. Holy cow. Woohoo! Keep those Status Coup hat purchases coming. I know that if I went to the barbecue, socially distanced barbecue, or I went to the football gathering or whatever, socially distanced, of course, I want to be rocking my hat so I could then spread the coup and tell people to tune in, subscribe, check it out. There you go. Go buy it. And by the way, for those of you who say, $25.99, too much for a hat, Jordan, well, Jen can tell you we have to pay a pretty penny for everything in this store. They don't make these things cheap for us to buy. So if we didn't set the price at what it is, we barely make anything. So trust me, we ain't price gouging you. We're not Big Pharma. Teespring and most of these online stores, between what they take in percentages and what it costs to make, it's not cheap for us. Anyway, so just to explain what I'm talking about, I've covered a lot of pipelines. Any fracked gas pipeline and crude oil pipelines, every one of them has leaks. Some are massive leaks that you actually see in the news, even though the oil companies lie about how many gallons leaked. And then there's just the everyday micro leaks that happen by sheer fact of these are high-pressured natural gas pipelines. They don't always get the pressuring right, which happens through compressor stations. Just by the act of fracking and fracking to get the oil and gas, the earth actually moves. I learned this a couple years ago when I was reporting in Virginia on the Mountain Valley Pipeline with Jen. And through the earth moving, you have more and more leaks. It's not only that they're leaking into the air, which is the methane release. Methane, you have different estimates, but methane is estimated to be 30 to 60 times more hazardous and potent than carbon dioxide, which for a long time was considered the worst of the worst in terms of greenhouse gases. Methane, which is emitted through natural gas, is worse. So you tell me, in one breath, Joe Biden is talking about we got to hire people to plug the holes, plug the leaks in wells, which is good. That's wonderful. But where do we have more leaks coming from? The wells or the frack gas pipelines that you're not doing anything about because you and the idiots around you think, well, we can't lose those blue-collar people in Pennsylvania or Michigan, or Ohio or Wisconsin. Well, Hillary Clinton ran. She wasn't going to ban fracking. She lost. Yeah, she won the popular vote. Okay, she lost the Electoral College. Right now, polls are looking decent for Biden, but it's still, if I'm Biden, too close for comfort in the battleground states. I don't really care about national polls. We don't have a popular vote victor. We have Electoral College. I wish we didn't, but that's just how it is right now. So in the battleground states, many of them which have fracking, if you had a bold vision like Bernie had, if you explained how we can revolutionize both the fight against climate change while creating way more jobs, permanent jobs. Remember, most of these fracking jobs are temporary during construction of these pipelines. If you actually made the case and you said, during this process, here is the transition plan, so you will not lose income, so you will not lose your jobs, your benefits. I think people in Pennsylvania, I think people in Ohio, I think people in Wisconsin, I think people in Michigan would hear you out. These people, most of them don't particularly care what it is. They just care that they have an income, that they have a livelihood. I don't think most of these people wake up in the morning saying, how do I destroy the planet? So Biden is not making this case. And the point is, again, say what you want about Biden. I'm not a fan. You know this. I'm also not going to lie to you. He is better than Trump on the environment. But that better is not good enough to stave off planetary destruction. Because nothing Biden is talking about doing will stop these wildfires in California. By the way, it's not just Biden. I mean, California governor, GQ model Gavin Newsom, who talks the good talk. He's very much like Biden and Cuomo. He talks wonderfully. Wonderful platitudes. He just had a meeting with Trump that CNN broadcasted today, talking very respectfully to Trump, saying, we agree to disagree on climate change. Well, he's been handing out fracking permits like candy in California. He is a mother fracker too. Can YouTube demonetize me for mother fracker? I don't think so. No. Even though I've been demonetized already. I digress.
I don't know. I'm telling the audience that you were retweeted by Mark Ruffalo
Oh, I was retweeted. I was retweeted by Mark Ruffalo, which was very big. Now, if only Mark Ruffalo will respond to my messages of the last 4 years to possibly explore partnership or funding with Status Coup. If you're watching, Mark, I love your work. I love your activism. And I'd love to explore ways that your status and financial wherewithal can contribute to actual justice journalism on water, which I do very much of, and the climate. So let's talk. And also Glenn Greenwald, which is awesome. Are you fracking kidding me? Status Coup is retweeted. Jordan, don't get too big for your britches. Jennifer, I DM'd him from my account, the Status Coup tweet. But yes, it wasn't me retweeted, it was Status Coup. Thank you very much. So, bottom line, Gavin Newsom, again, it's not just Biden. You got Democratic governors giving all of these fossil fuel companies whatever they want because where's the money? And by the way, this is a misnomer. A lot of people think it's because Democrats get money directly from fossil fuel companies. Not the case. I mean, Democrats do get money from fracking companies, but it's Wall Street. I mean, just look at this. Since 2008, there has been a long list of reasons to hold the finance sector to account. This fire season, we'd like to point out that the same industry that brought us the housing crisis is also directly fueling the climate crisis. They have provided over $700 billion in financing to the fossil fuel industry that just since the Paris Accord was signed. Not satisfied to simply fund massive increases in heat-trapping gases, financial entities have also invested $44 billion in activities that are decimating forests, especially the most diverse and effective carbon sinks on the planet. By the way, it was BlackRock investing in the same companies that were cutting down the Amazon forest in Brazil. Banks in particular are some of the largest investors in climate destruction. While some banks have begun to make moves saying no to financing Arctic drilling and new coal-fired plants, they're still financing fossil fuel extraction nearly everywhere, including here in California. When you swipe your Chase credit card, you're supporting a bank that's funding the climate crisis. It's particularly alarming and frankly head-scratching to note that the fracking industry, which also threatens the health of California communities, particularly communities of color, has not produced positive returns in over a decade. Aggressive oil and gas fracking has resulted in a glut, which combined with expensive production techniques makes profitability look like a pipe dream. It appears that the only profit in fracking is from debt servicing. Wait, who makes a lot of money off of debt servicing? Big banks, which, and this helps explain the head-scratching bit, accrues to the banks. Here's this article if you want to read it yourself. So, the bottom line is, again, I don't want to do like a false equivalation because, I mean, there just is no comparison. Donald Trump is a climate arsonist. And Donald Trump is dangerous to the future of the planet. I don't think Donald Trump particularly cares how he leaves the planet. He'll be dead in 10 to 15 years. I don't even think Donald Trump cares how he leaves it to little old Barron. Certainly not to Ivanka and the rest of the criminals. He don't care. Because Trump, there won't be wildfires around Trump Plaza, right? He'll be shielded. His family will be shielded from whatever climate catastrophe is coming. But the bottom line is, and this, you know, I wish Bernie was stronger on this. Biden can throw out positive policies. He could throw out, you know, doubling down on electric. He could throw down doubling or tripling down on renewables, on high-powered, high-electric transit. That's great. But it is not enough if you don't get rid of the greenhouse gases that are dramatically warming the temperature. I mean, if you live in Los Angeles, it was just like 115 degrees, I think, last Sunday. That ain't normal. If you live in other parts of the country, California, well, the wet season's supposed to come starting in the fall. It's usually not coming now till mid to late October, which is leaving the fuels, the brush, the grass, the trees, whatever, longer to be dry. Well, if you keep these conditions dry for that long, you're going to see more and more fires. It's once you do the research, it's not that complicated. So for all the positive things Biden is promising, and again, you always have to, have reality for what he's proposing. Maybe 20% of it actually happens. It ain't enough. So, okay, yes, Trump's a climate arsonist, but Biden is, to me, if you're not against fracking, you yourself are a climate denier. You could throw out the phrases that you believe in science and throw out these things that you want, but if in one breath you're talking about we need to plug the leaks in abandoned wells all over the country because they're leaking toxins, yet on the other end you're talking about leaving fracking in place, which is one giant 24/7 leak. All of these pipelines are leaking every single day. They're just not reported because you can't see most of the leaks. It's contributing to dirty water, dirty air, damaged animals. I mean, the list goes on. And this is where it takes courageous leadership. Leadership that says we don't have a choice. We have to ban this practice for the very reasons that he's saying we should plug the well leaks because they're releasing toxins into the air, into the water, everywhere, and it is only trapping more heat into the atmosphere, which is rising the temperatures, which is leading to the wildfires. Not to mention the accelerated wind. These wildfires are getting worse because of the accelerated wind. So what Biden is proposing is a nicer, more civilized, resistance-approved form of climate denialism. That's the reality. And by the way, there's a reason the oil and gas groups find common ground in the Biden energy plan. This is from the New York Times. The industry was relieved by what the plan did not include, chiefly a ban on fracturing. Quote, "There's a lot of room in there for oil and gas," said Matt Gallagher, president of Parsley Energy, a West Texas oil producer, about the Biden plan. Some executives were particularly enthusiastic that Biden wanted the federal government to invest in carbon capture and sequestration, which entails preventing emissions of greenhouse gases from reaching the atmosphere and thus allowing industry to continue burning fossil fuels for decades. In a sign of his all-inclusive, eclectic approach to energy, Biden is also proposing to use advanced nuclear reactors to produce electricity. Yeah, when oil and gas companies cite common ground, no good. You don't want to make you don't want to make common ground with the very people burning the planet. There is no common ground. Can we totally get rid of oil and gas tomorrow? No, you can't. But if you actually do the aggressive approach that Bernie talked about, which was $16 trillion, which some say isn't even far enough, you could certainly make the shift a lot faster. So don't be fooled by the corporate media that, only cite Trump being a climate arsonist and tell you, oh, Biden's approach. I heard one CNN analyst to say what Biden was talking about today is transformative. It would be transformative if he also pledged to ban fracking. But he's not. So I digress. All right, moving on to another ridiculous thing. And remember, get into that store, buy those hats. And I'm still waiting for our first GoFundMe donation of the day. So I hope and pray the folks in the super chat will GoFundMe. 6 days before my birthday. Yes, I'm going to drag this out as much as I can. So I occasionally have disagreements with some people about the big bag Russian boogeyman. I won't name who those people are. But there's some people in my life who really buy into this Russia stuff. Do I think Vladimir Putin's on your side? No, I do not. Do I think he's a good guy? No, I do not. Do I think Vladimir Putin has had many political opponents killed? I certainly do. But I, like the great and very underrated Henry Wallace, also believe that the United States government, in an effort to keep the masses dumb, to keep the masses numb, and to keep the masses distracted on the material stealing of the working class wealth, and to keep the masses distracted on the basic redistribution of wealth that has gone on in this country basically for 100 years, from us to the top, I do not believe in basically embracing and elevating the never-ending Red Scare that basically has not ended since the early 1940s and 1950s, with the advent of the House Committee on Un-American Activities, to McCarthy, to Kennedy getting killed, and, bring it to present day, Russiagate. You could say, yeah, Russia clearly does propaganda online, has bots, tries to influence the election, all those things. So does China. So does Israel, too, by the way. And so does many other countries. By the way, we, for many, many long years, have been not only influencing other countries' elections, but rigging other countries' elections. Go ask Matt Taibbi about what we did to Russia's 1996 election that re-elected Boris Yeltsin. But I digress. So it's not to say there is no Russian attempt to influence our elections, but the issue is when media and journalists, which I use loosely, elevate this to Pearl Harbor, which some have, and to a grave attack and threat on our democracy. What that is meant to do, particularly on cable news, which skews to an older audience, in the pages of the New York Times, Washington Post. Thank you, Levon, $9.99 in the super chat. I appreciate it, Levon. Keep it coming. It's all meant to distract us from reality. And reality is this. That's reality. That is where your money has gone for the last 40 years. It's all gone to the yacht owners, to the Chamber of Commerce, to the real estate developers, to the fossil fuel executives, to the big pharma executives, to the Wall Street financiers, and the politicians that enable and are accomplices to them all. That is all of the money hoarding to the top, with the rest of the money our money going all the way down. That is still 2015, so it's probably way worse. Accompanied with productivity skyrocketing, us, while that productivity is that's why that red line is going up, because of that blue line, the productivity, whereas our hourly compensation essentially static, frozen in time. So how do you distract people from that? Objectively, if the biggest political machine in American political history, the Clintons, maybe other than the Kennedys, what was a bigger machine, loses to a game show host, objectively, maybe media, a Democratic Party, think tanks, the whole revolving door might examine, wow, maybe there's a real outcry, maybe there's a real rebellion in this country against neoliberalism, against incrementalism, against the public-private partnership model, against, the toxic influence of money in politics. Maybe there's a populist revolt growing in our jobs being offshored to foreign countries for the last 30 years. Maybe we need to shift our policies, shift the way we raise money and fund campaigns so that we could start winning again. But that didn't happen in 2016. That didn't happen in 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020. It's become a never-ending Red Scare. And I always fight with certain people in my life saying, you are indulging and drinking the Kool-Aid of this steady propaganda. Again, that doesn't mean Russia is not trying to quote-unquote interfere through fake Facebook pages, through propaganda online, the bots, all these things. But when it becomes this 24/7 hysterical overreaction, That's when you see stories that are easily debunked. And more importantly, a never-ending narrative that forms that is meant to distract us so we don't have to actually report or focus on any of the economic realities of capitalism. And here we have just one more example, folks. This came out today. U.S. Commander, Intel still hasn't established Russia-paid Taliban bounties to kill U.S. troops. Quote, "It just has not been proved to a level of certainty that satisfies me," General Frank McKenzie told NBC News. McKenzie oversees the U.S. troops in Afghanistan. Well, you don't say. And this is a credit to this commander for even acknowledging this. I was kind of surprised to see it. 2 months after top Pentagon officials vowed to get to the bottom of whether the Russian government bribed the Taliban to kill American service members, the commander of troops in the region says a detailed review of all available intelligence has not been able to corroborate the existence of such a program. Quote, "It just has not been proved to a level of certainty that satisfies me," General Frank McKenzie, commander of the U.S. Central Command, told NBC News. McKenzie oversees U.S. troops in Afghanistan. The U.S. continues to hunt for new information on the matter. This really reminds me, I mean, obviously it's not the same thing, but this really reminds me of when we went to war in Iraq, citing weapons of mass destruction, and then after we launched the troops and after the war started, you heard things from generals, the Bush administration, and others saying, yeah, we're still looking for the weapons. We're still inspecting, to get confirmation. Quote, "We continue to look for that evidence," the general said. "I just haven't seen it yet. But it's not a closed issue." This part really is precious. McKenzie's comments, reflecting a consensus view among military leaders, underscores the lack of certainty around a keyword, let me highlight this, a narrative that has been accepted as fact by Democrats and other Trump critics, including presidential nominee Joe Biden, who has cited Russian bounties in attacks on President Donald Trump. So this is important. I want to show you one of the bylines on this story. Bylines just means authors. Ken Delanian. Ken Delanian is a former, Jen, if you could check me on it, I think he worked for the FBI, maybe Homeland Security. I'm not sure which one. Formerly worked in intelligence, now a quote-unquote journalist. He has pushed a lot of these Russiagate stories. So Mr. Delanian in this piece writes, McKenzie's comments reflect a consensus view among military leaders, underscoring the lack of certainty around a narrative that has been accepted as facts by Democrats and other Trump critics. Well, how exactly did that narrative that Russia had literally been paying bounties to the Taliban to kill American soldiers, how does that narrative start for the Democratic Party and Trump critics to start picking it up? I don't know. Maybe people like Ken Delanian? This is from June. An official familiar with the intelligence tells me it shows that American service members and Afghan civilians died as a result of bounties paid by the Russians. But many national security officials, not politicals, continue to downplay this intel. So many unanswered questions. Oh, you gotta love it. You gotta love it. Former, Jen just sent it to me, hold on. This guy used to work for the CIA. Here's a story from The Intercept. The LA Times, hold on. The CIA's mop-up man. LA Times reporter cleared stories with agency before publication. This is when this guy was at the CIA. So he basically, before he got to NBC, would basically have the CIA approve his stories. I mean, you don't send your stories to the CIA or anybody. I mean, in the past, I've sent, hey, I'm hearing this. What do you have to say? Do you have a comment? Or, hey, I'm just checking, is this the number of X, Y, and Z? But I would never send full-on story to people that are the subject of the story before publishing it. That's not journalism, that's politics. So I just find it incredible that in this story on NBC News, because essentially commanders have been coming out saying, hold the phone, there's no like actual evidence that Russia paid the Taliban to kill American troops, which Biden has used in speeches and emails. NBC has gone 24/7 hysterical, MSNBC, Rachel Maddow, CNN. He has the cojones to talk about the narrative that's been formed when he's the one that created the narrative in the first place. You could be wrong about a story. Your sources could lead you wrong. It's happened to me before. You could just make an honest mistake. That's life, that's journalism, and you correct it. But these are not honest mistakes. These are people like Ken Delanian literally reporting just shit he's told by people in the CIA or NSA or Homeland Security or whatever. Yeah, he kind of straddles the line. I'm being told this by U.S. intelligence, but some officials don't, are downplaying it. So many unanswered questions. Then why are you reporting it? If you don't know for sure, if you haven't seen any documents that actually provide any conclusive evidence, did you find communications between Russia and the Taliban? Did you find money transactions, wirings, in the old days of journalism, actual evidence? It's unbelievable. And again, this isn't Watergate, but the point is, by these constant stories on Russia, and again, this isn't because I'm defending Donald Trump. Do I think Donald Trump has a soft spot for Putin? I certainly do, because I think he likes authoritarian leaders. I also think possible Donald Trump has a soft spot for Putin because Donald Trump has been laundering money since the 1980s through the mafia, including Russian sources. So yeah, I would have a soft spot too if I don't want that exposed by Putin. I also think, frankly, Donald Trump cares about Donald Trump. He ain't gonna be president forever. If you actually Google it and look it up, a lot of Donald Trump's real estate sales are with Russian oligarchs. So, not that that's an innocent explanation, but there was always another side, which was never actually discussed, of why Donald Trump would be so deferential to Vladimir Putin. Just like he's so deferential to Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia. He cares about himself and his business interests. NatSec, national security. So it's just incredible because this, and it's not just this NBC reporter. Essentially what we've had for 4 or 5 years is essentially reporters with their sources in the CIA, FBI, who feed them stuff. Hey, new member Alejandra! 1,733 Status Coup members. Be like Alejandra, sign up as a Status Coup member for $5 a month. Support real independent journalism. statuscoup.com/join. But what this does, this constant Russiagate bullshit, it does many things. Number one, it keeps older voters, because older voters and older people generally watch CNN and MSNBC. Not all older people, as I always say. A lot of progressives are older. Our audience have a lot of older people. We love you. But by the numbers, the people watching MSNBC and CNN are not younger people. They are above the age of 60 in most cases. It keeps them numb. It keeps them thinking, oh no, Hillary didn't lose because, moderates and, conservative Democrats and neoliberalism has gone out of style. Hillary didn't lose because people are tired of crumbs. Hillary didn't lose because, people are getting sick and rebelling against capitalism. People are tired of all the money being given to Wall Street vultures. No, it's because of Russia. They stole the election. And we're already seeing that excuse and rationalization starting to be preemptively put in place if Biden loses. Kamala Harris, in an interview, just said Russia's already interfering. And by the way, to be clear, as a journalist, it is absolutely 100% possible that Vladimir Putin and Russia did pay bounties for the Taliban to kill U.S. soldiers. Anytime that I don't want to speak for Glenn Greenwald or anyone else, debunk this stuff, it's not a universal thing that none of this stuff could be true. It could be true. But as journalists, you're supposed to, again, journalists, you're supposed to actually vet information and want to see some actual evidence other than what a source tells you. Let me give you an example. I can't be too specific, but I think this will make sense. So Jen and I broke a very, very big story a couple months ago for Vice, right? On the Flint water cover-up. And I'm not, obviously I'm not going to get into my sources, but because I've been to Flint many, many times, I built up a lot of sources. And a lot of sources, when you build up a lot of sources, they lead you to higher up sources and higher up sources, and that's how it works. So not only did I see documents, confidential documents that proved former Michigan Governor Rick Snyder was warned that the Flint River was a dangerous water source and shouldn't be used for drinking water consumption 1 year before the water switch. But through documents and yes, sources, we found out that he knew about the deadly Legionella outbreak, which is a deadly bacteria in the water. He found out about it 16 months earlier than he told Congress he knew. 16 months earlier. He found out about it 6 months after the water switch when there was still time to save lives. He knew about it and could have immediately switched Flint off of the Flint River, and he did not. How did we find that out? From visual documents, but also sources. I can't get into those sources, but those sources were in a position to know. They were also in a position to have seen the same documents that I saw and Jen saw. So the point is, we didn't just have like one person tell us something and theorize something. We waited for actual damning evidence. And we included some of that evidence in the story. That's how you're supposed to do it. Of course, in very few things in life or in journalism, it's very rare that you have like 110% conclusive evidence in writing. Most criminals don't put it in writing. Hey, I'm a criminal, here's how I did it. But in journalism, you're supposed to vet things and look for things that could back it up. That has been missing in all of this Russia hysteria coverage, because all of these sources, in a mad dash to like rise up the resistance ranks and the blue check Twitter ranks, have basically just, all right, my source in the CIA or FBI or Homeland Security or whatever, tell me something, I report it, and it's trending on Twitter, and it becomes a whole big thing. Again, it's not to defend Trump, because I don't put it past him to collaborate with authoritarians, but there was never any evidence. And I said this when I was at the Young Turks and argued with Cenk about it. There's no evidence Trump's campaign worked with Russia to steal the election. I mean, you couldn't even write a screenplay on that. He's not smart enough. His campaign was a mess. So this shows you what American journalism or corporate journalism actually is. These people, like Ken Delanian, they set the narrative based on quote-unquote sources, which are just people in the intelligence community feeding them stuff. Sometimes maybe the sources believe it's true, and sometimes they're just leaking lies for their own political benefit. The CIA, Homeland Security, they've been known to lie to journalists before. But it's not just this NBC reporter. And unfortunately, because this guy is now, I guess on Twitter, you could now limit who could see your tweets. So I'm basically banned from seeing his tweets. These are screenshots. He didn't like that I called him out for his propaganda on CNN many times during the primary. So he basically blocked me from being able to see his tweets. But here's a screenshot. Jim Sciutto ran with this bullshit too. Jim Sciutto has a morning show on CNN. This is deeply disturbing. Beyond admitting he never raised Russian bounties intel to Putin in at least 8 conversations, asked about Russia arming the Taliban, Trump says, well, we supplied weapons when they were fighting Russia too. A Russian talking point. This is how the Red Scare continues and prospers. You have quote-unquote reporters and anchors like Jim Sciutto pushing essentially glorified theories that the spooks in the intelligence community are feeding them, stating it essentially as fact in the 24/7 dynamic of us versus Trump, and feeding it to older viewers that eat it up, watching CNN, MSNBC. Here's another one. He's mentioning Barbara Starr, who is, if you know Barbara Starr, she is one of the most loyal deep state stenographers. She's been on CNN, I think, since Lincoln's assassination. She is a mouthpiece for the intelligence community. She's never, ever reported anything that didn't come from a spook. He's saying Barbara Starr reports that there were some efforts at protecting U.S. forces in Afghanistan because of the intelligence regarding Russian bounties. If the threat was serious enough to increase force protection, why wouldn't the president be briefed? I mean, the list goes on. Those are only a few of them. If I don't have all day, Rachel Maddow did a full-on hysterical segment about this. But again, like, where does it end? If you ask me, who's a bigger threat to American quote-unquote democracy, which, by the way, doesn't exist? In a democracy, voting actually makes a difference. In America, it doesn't. But I put that aside. Is Russia a graver threat than China? I mean, China, I think, has pretty damn good hacking capabilities. It's just like nuance and proportionality has just been tossed out the window under the Trump era, all because of Trump derangement syndrome. And honestly, and I ain't getting paid to say this, I would really encourage you to read John Nichols' book from The Nation on Henry Wallace. Not a lot has changed since the 1940s. It's the same exact playbook that Henry Wallace warned Americans about. He warned against a Cold War. He warned against indulging in this Red Scare. He wasn't naive. He didn't think like, Russia was completely altruistic, but he also did not engage in, Russia is our enemy and the Russian people are horrible and, the communists will take over. And he warned against that because he had the foresight to see this is an effort to distract the masses. This is an effort by the 1%. He didn't phrase it that way at the time, but the plutocrats, the elites in the Democratic and Republican Party, to point the direction somewhere else. When we want to distract the American people, when we want them not to focus on the internal enemy, which is the wealthy, exploiting you, exploiting your labor, taking advantage economically through how much, through wages, through working conditions. How do we distract? War. How do we distract? Cold War or hot war. So, I'm sorry to say, right now, whatever, I think it's pretty much a toss-up. It leans towards Biden. But if Biden loses, we're going to see more of this until other journalists, other than Glenn Greenwald, I don't consider Michael Tracy a journalist, but he's been right, at least on Russia. He's moved over to full-on, I don't know what he is now. He's teetering on Proud Boy, Canaan, Alex Jones territory. I can't stand him. You could tell him I said so. It's terrible. But other other than the few journalists that have stood up to this, like Aaron Mate. I don't agree with everything. Sometimes I think maybe he underscores certain things that are more significant. But overall, he has a pretty good batting average on Russiagate. But enough with these stories. Unless you actually have evidence other than, the general calling you to lunch at the CIA commissary and feeding you this bullshit, stop printing things you have no evidence of. It's how we go to war. And it's how we keep the masses distracted. And I digress. Now, I got one more story for you because I'm energized today. You see what taking 2 days off does for a man? I took Sunday off. I usually go live on Sunday, but I'm re-energized from taking these days off. Bernie. Jen, by the way, let me know how many hat sales we're at now. And let me see. Oh my God, still nobody in the GoFundMe. This is so sad. Nobody cares about my birthday. Oh, Seth left in the super chat. Yes. Seth Peterson, $40. Hope you can stay well rested, Jordan. Your enthusiasm for getting out in the field and for real journalism is very appreciated and important. Seth, I really appreciate it, and I hope you know your constant contributions really make a difference. Particularly since COVID hit, we don't have like a high-powered accountant to really look at it, but we've lost a lot in revenue. So the super chats, the GoFundMe, the member signups, the hat sales, all of it combined, and other products, by the way, it's not just hats in our store. All of it combined really make a difference. So thank you, Seth. And we're up to 8 hat sales. So keep buying your hats. Keep buying those hats. So, everybody's got a different tune on Bernie. I've been on the record. I'm not happy with a lot of what Bernie did in the primary. I'm not happy with a lot of the things Bernie's done after the primary, but I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I love Bernie still. I don't think he's a sellout, a coward, and whatever else people are saying these days. And it came out recently that Bernard privately has been telling the Biden campaign, iceberg, right ahead. Love that graphic. It never gets old. Bernie Sanders is privately expressing concerns about Joe Biden's presidential campaign, according to 3 people with knowledge of the conversations, and is urging Biden's team to intensify its focus on pocketbook issues and appeals to liberal voters. Sanders, the runner-up to Biden in the Democratic primaries, has told associates that Biden is at serious risk of coming up short in the November election if he continues his vaguer, that's being generous, more centrist approach, according to the people who spoke on the condition of anonymity. So, let me explain how this works. Bernie's an altruistic guy, but Bernie knows politics. They leaked this to the Washington Post. They wanted this out there as kind of a FU to Biden. The senator has identified several specific changes he'd like to see, saying Biden should talk more about health care and about his economic plans, and should campaign more with figures popular among young liberals like AOC. Asked for comment, Sanders' team provided a statement from Fez Shakir, the senator's campaign manager in the presidential race, saying that Sanders is, quote, working as hard as he can to get Biden elected, but has advised some strategic adjustments. Quote, Senator Sanders is confident that Biden is in a very strong position to win the election, but nevertheless feels there are areas the campaign can continue to improve on, Shakir said. He has been in direct contact with the Biden team and has urged them to put more emphasis on how they will raise wages, create millions of good-paying jobs, lower the cost of prescription drugs, and expand health care coverage. Shakir said Sanders also thinks that a stronger outreach to young people, the Latino community, and the progressive movement will be of real help to the campaign. So, I don't think Bernie Sanders is doing this unless Bernie Sanders thinks there's a genuine chance Biden's going to lose. If Bernie Sanders felt confident that Biden was going to win, I don't think he's leaking this to the Washington Post. And by the way, this is what happens. I mean, Bernie's confidants aren't willy-nilly going to talk to the Washington Post unless he wants to get a point across. And there's a difference between privately getting a point across to the Biden campaign and making it go through in the media that gets them paying attention. And frankly not happy. Straight vodka, Jordan? No, straight water. I don't like vodka, I like whiskey. So, oh, should I mention the person who bought us the thing on the registry? By the way, somebody just Googled our registry for a wedding and bought us slippers. So whoever that was, thank you very much. Totally unnecessary, but thank you. So, I think a few things. Number one, I think Bernie, I understand why he's being diplomatic. I understand why he's saying, oh, no, I think Biden's in a good position, blah, 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 blah. Because Bernie don't want to be blamed. Bernie don't want to be Ralph Nadered, you know? But at the end of the day, if Bernie thinks Donald Trump is an existential threat to the nation and that democracy itself is on the line and we got to elect Joe Biden, or democracy is going down like the Titanic, I think he needs to raise the fire alarm a little louder so that people in the back can hear it. I'm happy that he leaked this to the Washington Post. He went on MSNBC. You know, he cleaned it up a little bit to be like, no, of course it's not true. But then cited all the things that Biden is doing wrong. But, you know, at the end of the day, I don't think Biden or his campaign are going to listen to a damn thing Bernie says or the progressive movement says, because they literally get a kick out of shitting on the progressive movement. They literally have disdain for progressives. They have disdain for working people, frankly. They dress it up and pretend that Biden is a man of the working, is a man of, you know, unions and is middle-class Joe and all this nonsense. He's not. I mean, his record is his record. I've gone through with it. I've gone through his record exhaustively here. But you don't want to give them the opportunity to blame it on you if he loses. And the way you do that is by screaming, you know, from the rooftops, you're going to lose if you don't do these things. Because when he loses, that's when you say, I told you so. I said all these things loud and proud. I urged you to cater to X, Y, and Z. The numbers will be there to back it up. If Biden loses, it's going to be because the same reasons Hillary Clinton lost. He's not going to have the black voters show up in the numbers he needs. He's not going to have the Latinos show up in the numbers he needs. And he's not going to have age 18 to 29 show up in the numbers he needs. So if Bernie starts screaming it now, they can't do what they did in 2016 and blame him, because he will have very credible I told you so points. I mean, there's stories now. I just read it in the Washington Post. Biden's not doing so hot among Latinos. Trump is doing a significantly better than he did among Latinos in 2016. Trump is actually, surprisingly, I think he's over 10% among black voters. Donald Trump. So, I say, Bernie, don't, you know, I don't know the analogy, but it's good that you're kind of speaking up, but speak up a little louder. Because, honestly, if they don't listen to you, then you have to start wondering, are they trying to actually win this election? Because people who want to win do whatever the hell it takes to win. They could see the data. I don't know what data they're looking at if they think in the two pots of voters that there's more voters in the moderate Republican pot than voters in the Latino, young black, young white, and progressive bucket. That's just, there's no data that supports that. There is, you know, they called Bernie's strategy in the primary naive, that he was going to expand the electorate. It is naive to think you're going to suddenly convert, you know, millions of Republicans, moderate Republicans, which is not even a thing anymore, over to vote for Joe Biden. That is naive and suicidal, frankly. By the way, that's why it's even close in these battleground states, because they've taken this approach of catering to moderate Republicans, which is pretty much depressing interest, support, and it seems we'll see about turnout among young people, young black people, young Latino, and independents that lean towards the progressive side. So I'm glad Bernie kind of came out of the political witness protection program a little bit. I'm glad that privately and then publicly kind of called out Biden on these things. But I'd like to hear it a little louder. So instead of saying, I'd like to hear him talk about healthcare a little more, how about saying, what is your plan? Because we heard him say public option during the primary. Notice in his speech during the DNC convention, he didn't mention the public option. All he talked about was expanding Obamacare. That's deliberate. He hasn't really been talking about healthcare much. I get his emails. I see his speeches. He ain't talking about it. It's Joe, give the people who've lost their jobs and have no health care, tell them what you're going to do for them immediately. First 100 days, what are you going to do so that they have health care? So that it doesn't bankrupt them. Specifics. Make it simple. What are you going to do to hold corporations accountable that are laying people off and not bringing those jobs back? Yet continue not to pay any taxes and give themselves bonuses to their CEOs. What are you going to do? Biden has vaguely referenced like taxing or a penalty to companies that offshore jobs. Okay, that's a start. But what are you going to do to actually create the conditions so that they start actually creating jobs here? So we'll see. I am not holding my breath, but we shall see. So that's it for today. One more reminder. Got eight sales so far. Definitely go to the Status Coup store. Get your hat. You can get the regular ball cap and the flat. What are they?
Brim.
Flat rim.
Brim.
Oh, flat brim.
Oh my God, who are you?
The flat brim. I want to see everyone wearing a Status Coup hat. Definitely check it out. Also, if you got a couple bucks, we appreciate it. Oh, wow. I totally missed this. Thank you for the GoFundMe donation. Alexis, $100. Deborah, $50. Holy cow. So we're almost at $119,000. That would be $170 away from $119,000. Tomorrow's my mother's birthday, so happy birthday if you're watching. And in 6 days is my birthday, so let's keep this GoFundMe party going this week. Any amount, I think the minimum on GoFundMe is $5. Any amount helps us out a bit, helps us a lot. Jen and I are talking about the next trip to take, because we obviously are trying to cover things in the field as safely as we can. So definitely contribute if you can, and as always, you could sign up as a Status Coup member for as low as $5 a month. And definitely line of communication always open. So if you have a story idea, if you know something going on in your community that's being ignored, email info@statuscoup.com, info@statuscoup.com, and we'll check it out. We'll try to get back to you if we can. Thank you for the super chat. Anasti Arasaka, $4.99. Happy birthday, Jordan. Boy, thank you. Thank you. All right. Thanks for watching. I will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.